10 movies that critics destroyed, that audiences hated, that studios buried and tried to forget. Today, we're breaking down 10 fantasy disasters of the 70s that became masterpieces. The films that bombed at the box office, got laughed out of theaters, and somehow became the most influential cult classics in cinema history. Let's dive in. Number 10, Fantastic Planet, 1973. Imagine humans the size of insects kept as pets by giant blue aliens. Now imagine that as a French-Czech animated film with visuals so surreal and disturbing that parents walk their kids out of theaters screaming. Fantastic Planet was unlike anything audiences had ever seen. Director René Laloux created a world that felt like a bad acid trip, mixed with a philosophy lecture. The animation style was deliberately ugly and unsettling. Humans were dragged around on leashes. The aliens meditated while tiny people fought for survival in a hostile landscape. American distributors had no idea what to do with it. Limited release, minimal promotion. Critics called it pretentious and inaccessible. The few people who saw it were divided, either traumatized or mesmerized. But the film won the special jury prize at Cannes. And slowly, through midnight screenings and college film classes, it found its audience. The psychedelic imagery influenced generations of artists. Adventure Time borrowed its aesthetic. Tool used clips in their music videos. What seemed like unwatchable experimental nonsense in 1973 became a masterpiece of allegorical science fiction about oppression, freedom, and what it means to be human when someone treats you like an animal. Number 9, The Holy Mountain, 1973. Alejandro Jodorowsky made a movie so insane that it's still almost impossible to describe 50 years later. John Lennon and Yoko Ono funded it. Multiple countries banned it. And anyone who saw it either walked out in disgust or had their mind permanently altered. The Holy Mountain has no traditional plot. A thief who looks like Jesus joins 7 powerful people representing different planets. They climb a holy mountain to achieve immortality. Along the way, there's religious imagery mixed with graphic sexuality, real animal deaths that caused massive controversy, and symbolism so dense that film students are still writing papers trying to decode it. Theaters that dared to show it faced protests. Religious groups condemned it as blasphemy. Art house audiences called it a masterpiece or pretentious garbage with no middle ground. The film disappeared for decades when Jodorowsky and producer Alan Klein had a falling out over distribution rights. But filmmakers never forgot it. Gaspar Noé studied it frame by frame. Darren Aronofsky called it a major influence on The Fountain. Kanye West referenced it. The Holy Mountain became the ultimate cult film, a spiritual acid trip that Hollywood could never make today and probably shouldn't have made back then either.
All right, Vincent, let's make this one an end run. We'll catch them in a crossfire.
Number 8, The Black Hole, 1979. Disney wanted their own Star Wars. They spent $20 million on The Black Hole. They hired the best special effects team in the business. They created gorgeous production design and one of the darkest stories Disney ever told. And it failed spectacularly. The Black Hole was too scary for children and too silly for adults. A crew investigates a spaceship at the edge of a black hole, discovers a mad scientist who murdered his crew and turned them into robot zombies, and ends with a psychedelic journey through hell itself. This was Disney. Disney made this movie. With implied deaths and robot violence and existential horror. Critics destroyed it. Star Wars fans laughed at it. The box office barely broke even despite massive marketing. The movie felt confused about its own identity. Gorgeous visuals and mature themes wrapped in clunky dialogue and a cute robot sidekick clearly designed to sell toys. But time has been kinder to the black hole. John Barry's orchestral score is now considered one of the best in science fiction. The production design influenced countless space films, and recent critical re-evaluations recognize it as an ambitious failure that deserves respect for trying something genuinely dark and weird under the Disney banner.
No food, no females.
Okay, you just sit there on your fuzzy butt while I do all the goddamn work.
Number 7. A Boy and His Dog, 1975. The apocalypse happened. Civilization collapsed. A teenage boy survives in the wasteland with his telepathic dog. They search for food and women. The dog is smarter than the boy, and the ending is so dark that audiences walked out of theaters furious and disturbed. A Boy and His Dog was based on Harlan Ellison's novella and directed by L.Q. Jones on a shoestring budget. Young Don Johnson, years before Miami Vice made him famous, played Vic, a survivor whose only companion is blood, a dog who can speak telepathically and has better morals than any human in the film. The movie was a post-apocalyptic black comedy that nobody knew how to market. Too violent and misogynistic for mainstream audiences. Too weird for exploitation fans. The underground survivors living in a 1950s themed society felt bizarre and satirical. And that ending? The ending became legendary for all the wrong reasons. Critics hated it. Feminists condemned it. Ellison himself had mixed feelings about the adaptation, but the film built a cult following through late-night screenings and word of mouth. It influenced Mad Max, The Road Warrior, and later, the entire Fallout video game series. 50 years later, it's still controversial, still disturbing, and still impossible to forget once you've seen it. Number 6. Solaris, 1972. Andrei Tarkovsky made a 3-hour Soviet science fiction film about grief, memory, and whether we can ever truly know another person. The Soviet Union wanted their answer to 2001, A Space Odyssey. What they got was slower, stranger, and infinitely more depressing. Solaris takes place mostly on a space station orbiting a planet covered in an ocean that reads human minds and manifests their deepest memories as physical beings. A psychologist arrives to find the crew going insane, haunted by people from their past who shouldn't exist. His dead wife appears. She's real, but not real. She loves him, but doesn't know why. And the planet watches everything, understanding nothing. Western audiences found it unbearably slow. The first hour barely mentions space. Long takes of highways and rain. Philosophical conversations that go nowhere. The science fiction community rejected it as pretentious art cinema pretending to be sci-fi. Box office was minimal outside the Soviet Union, but Ingmar Bergman called it the greatest film he'd ever seen. Critics slowly realized what Tarkovsky accomplished, using science fiction to explore grief and human connection in ways realistic drama never could. Steven Soderbergh remade it in 2002 with George Clooney and still couldn't capture the original's haunting power. Arrival and Interstellar owe everything to Solaris. Number 5. The Wicker Man, 1973. A devout Christian police officer travels to a remote Scottish island to investigate a missing girl. The islanders practice pagan rituals. They lie to him constantly. And everything builds to an ending so shocking that it became one of the most famous finales in horror history. British Lion Films hated The Wicker Man. They cut it from 100 minutes to 88 minutes. They destroyed the original negative. They dumped it into theaters as a B-movie double feature with Don't Look Now. Critics ignored it. Audiences stayed away. The studio considered it an embarrassing failure and tried to bury it forever. Christopher Lee worked for free because he believed in the project. He called it his best performance and spent decades trying to get the full version restored. The folk horror elements, paganism versus Christianity, ancient rituals in modern times, confused audiences who expected a traditional horror movie with jump scares and monsters. But bootleg VHS copies spread through underground trading networks. cult audiences discovered what the studio threw away. The film's exploration of religious fanaticism and cultural clash felt more relevant as years passed. By the 1990s, critics called it a masterpiece. The terrible 2006 Nicolas Cage remake somehow proved the original's brilliance by showing how badly you could mess it up. Number 4. Phase 4, 1974. Ants become super intelligent overnight. They build geometric towers in the Arizona desert. They coordinate attacks with mathematical precision. And humanity realizes they're not the dominant species anymore. Phase 4 was legendary graphic designer Saul Bass's only feature film as director. The man who created iconic movie posters and title sequences for Hitchcock made a philosophical horror film about evolution and communication disguised as a creature feature. Paramount Pictures had no idea what they'd funded. The studio looked at Bass's cut and panicked. The ending was a 10-minute psychedelic sequence showing human evolution guided by the ants. Too weird, too abstract, too unmarketable. They cut it entirely and released a truncated version that confused critics and bombed at the box office. Marketing sold it as schlocky B-movie trash about killer bugs. For 40 years, that original ending was considered lost. Bass died in 1996, never seeing his complete vision restored. Then, in 2012, the footage was discovered and reintegrated. Suddenly, Phase 4 made sense. The ants weren't villains, they were the next step in Earth's evolution, and humans were either obstacles or partners in something transcendent. Alex Garland cited it as a major influence on Annihilation. The film's clinical, observational style influenced cerebral sci-fi for decades. What seemed like a failed monster movie was actually revolutionary philosophical science fiction. Number 3. The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976. David Bowie plays an alien who crashes on Earth, becomes a billionaire selling advanced technology, and slowly destroys himself with alcohol, television, and human corruption. It's barely a plot. It's more like watching someone's soul disintegrate in slow motion. Director Nicholas Roeg made a film so fragmented and non-linear that even fans struggled to explain what happened. The studio cut 20 minutes from the US release, making it even more incomprehensible. Critics called it pretentious and pointless. The box office was disastrous. RCA pulled out of film production entirely after this failure. Bowie gave the performance of his career playing an alien who never quite understands humanity and gets trapped by our worst vices. His real-life struggles with addiction bled into the character. But 1970s audiences wanted Star Wars and Close Encounters, optimistic space adventures, not depressing art films about capitalism destroying an innocent alien soul. Decades later, critics realized what they'd missed. The Man Who Fell to Earth became the blueprint for cerebral, emotionally devastating science fiction. Ridley Scott studied it before making Blade Runner. Jonathan Glazer cited it as inspiration for Under the Skin. A 2022 TV series tried to recapture its magic, but couldn't. Roeg and Bowie created something so uniquely strange that it remains inimitable nearly 50 years later. Number 2, Logan's Run, 1976. In the future, everyone lives in a sealed city. Life is perfect. There's only one rule. When you turn 30, you die. No exceptions. Anyone who runs gets hunted down and killed by police called Sandmen. Logan's Run won a Special Academy Award for visual effects and still looked embarrassingly dated the day it premiered. The special effects were already obsolete compared to what audiences would see in Star Wars 1 year later. Critics mocked the production design. The acting felt wooden, the philosophy felt shallow, and that ending where they discover the old man living outside the city? People laughed in theaters. MGM spent $9 million and barely made it back. The film felt like psychedelic 1960s sci-fi crashing into the cynical 1970s. A TV series launched in 1977 and died after one season. Logan's run became a punchline, the future movie that got the future completely wrong. But something strange happened over the decades. Young adult dystopias exploded with The Hunger Games, Divergent, and Maze Runner. Suddenly, Logan's Run's premise, young people trapped in a system that kills them for aging, felt relevant again. Number 1, Zardos, 1974. Sean Connery wears a red diaper, thigh-high leather boots, and a braided ponytail. He worships a giant floating stone head that vomits guns. This was his first major film after leaving James Bond. Critics called it career suicide. Director John Borman came off the success of Deliverance and made the most insane science fiction film of the 1970s. In the year 2293, immortal elites live in a protected dome while barbarian exterminators hunt and kill the remaining humans outside. Connery plays Zed, an exterminator who penetrates the dome and discovers the immortals are bored, suicidal, and desperately want to die. The imagery is absolutely deranged. The floating head, the red diaper, the casual nudity, dense philosophical dialogue about consciousness and mortality delivered by actors in absurd costumes. 20th Century Fox had no idea how to market it. Critics destroyed it. Audiences stayed away in droves. Box office was catastrophic. What seemed like unwatchable, pretentious garbage became a cult masterpiece. Zardoz is still ridiculous, still bizarre, still impossible to defend as a good movie. But it's unforgettable, ambitious, and absolutely unique. A complete artistic vision that Hollywood would never greenlight today. Which disaster shocked you the most? Which one are you actually going to watch now? Drop your answer in the comments below. Hit subscribe if you want more deep dives into forgotten film history. And smash that like button if you can't believe Sean Connery actually wore that outfit. Thanks for watching.